Committee, Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, were you guessing or lying? The day after President Trump is shot, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said, quote, "The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false." The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, "That is an unequivocally false assertion. We had not received any request for additional security measures that were rebuffed." But 5 days later, the Washington Post said this: "Top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel." The next day, the New York Times said this: "Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down some requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail." So which is it? Because both statements can't be true. Were you guessing or lying when you said you didn't turn down requests from President Trump's detail?
Neither, sir, and I appreciate the question.
Well, what were you doing? Because those statements don't jive.
So what I can tell you is that for the event in Butler, there were no requests that were denied. As far as requests...
Well, maybe they got tired of asking. Maybe you turned them down so darn much, they said, not worth asking. How many times did you turn them down ahead of that?
I think that it is important to distinguish between what some people may view as a denial of an asset or a request.
Well, is Mr. Guglielmi your spokesperson? He said he acknowledged the Secret Service had turned down some requests. I'm asking how many?
A denial of a request does not equal a vulnerability.
Well, tell me what it is.
There are a number of ways that threats and risks can be mitigated with a number of different assets, whether that be through personnel, whether that be through technology, or other resources.
Well, tell the committee which it was. They asked for additional help in some form or another. You told them no. How many times did you tell them no, and what did you tell them no to?
Again, I cannot speak to specific incidents, but I can tell you in general terms, the Secret Service is judicious with their resources based on...
What does some requests mean? How many times? Some indicate requests is plural. So more than once they asked for additional help and you turned them down. What did they ask for and how many times did you turn them down? Pretty basic questions.
So again, without having all of the details in front of me, sir, what I can tell you is that there are times...
You didn't get briefed on how many times you turned down the Trump detail when they asked for additional help?
I'm sorry.
You didn't get briefed on that before you came to this hearing, knowing you were going to get asked that question?
What I can tell you is that in generic terms, when details make a request, there are times that there are alternate ways to cover off on that threat or that risk.
But that's not what he said. He said they were denied certain requests, some requests. This is your spokesperson, not me talking. This is the Secret Service talking. And what a change from absolutely false, unequivocally false to, oh, by the way, there were some times where we didn't give them what they wanted. That's a huge change in 5 days. And the fact that you can't answer how many times you did that, that's pretty darn frustrating, not just for me, but for the country.
I hear your frustration.
Let me ask you this. Were any of those requests denied to President Trump's detail after you knew about the Iranian threat?
What I can tell you, again, I don't know the specifics, is that there are times when we can fill a request. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a Secret Service asset or resource. We can fill that request with locally available assets.
You spoke to anyone at the White House since July 13th?
Yes, I have.
Who'd you talk to?
I have briefed the President and the Vice President.
Talked to the First Lady?
No, I have not.
Talked to the White House staff? Anyone in the White House communications?
No, I have not.
Have you talked to the counter sniper who took the shot that took out the bad guy?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us about that conversation?
I would not want to reveal conversations that I've had with my employees.
But that's exactly the kind of information the American people want to know. American people who pay your salary.
I understand. This is an ongoing investigation. And
who's all doing the investigating at Secret Service? I know the Inspector General, but is there also an internal investigation in addition to the Inspector General?
We are conducting a mission assurance investigation internally, yes.
You know what it looks like, Director? It looks like you won't answer some pretty basic questions. It looks like you got a 9% raise and you cut corners when it came to protecting one of the most important individuals, most well-known individuals on the planet. A former president, likely the guy who's going to be the next president. It looks like you guys were cutting corners. That's what it looks like to me. Is that true?
I am here today because I want to answer questions. but I also want to be cautious.
You might want to, but you haven't answered. I don't think you've answered one question from the chairman, the ranking member, or me. Well, we got a lot of other people asking. We'll see if your record improves. But right now, you haven't answered, I don't think, any questions. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheatle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheatle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been
Yes
eager to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer
to
the question.
committee.
We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you
That
on
is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman, I want to.
I'm
Come
gonna
on. We have to
continue.
maintain decorum in this committee, no matter
Have
how
you provided
upset we
any
get.
and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. You're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. Well, the answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All right.
we
How
need to
many
determine.
how many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheatle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop a trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
Those are absolutely questions that we need to have.
I know they're
answers
questions,
to.
but you know, the fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence. Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting president
So your answer is he didn't.
and continuity of government and the responsibility
So he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter-surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational working.
So that's
for
an answer is
protection
no. Did you call them the next
of the
day?
president. Yes, I spoke with
You
them.
called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because Security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site, what was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter-sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all the way up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Comparator's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Chairman. Director, real quick, at what time was Secret Service aware of the active threat against President Trump? Director, what time?
So the Secret Service was aware that there was an individual who had been identified as suspicious, and that individual was attempting to be tracked down.
At what time?
I don't have a specific timeline other than to tell
Director,
you,
it's been 9 days.
I understand
At what
that.
time?
I want to make sure that I give you factual information, sir.
Director, have you talked to the agents on the ground that day?
Yes, I have.
You've talked to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Your senior team has talked to every agent that was on the ground that day.
Yes, we have.
Have they all corroborated the same time they identified the shooter or they were made aware of the shooter, either by attendees in the crowd or a local police department?
There are a number of reports of when those times were made.
Was it
those
5 minutes
notifications.
before the first shot rang out?
No,
Generally speaking, was it 10 minutes before the first shot rang out?
no.
Was it 15 minutes before the first shot rang out?
It was less than that time frame when it was identified as a threat.
How many days before the shooting took place did Secret Service actually do their advance work to secure the facility that the rally was going to be held at?
5 days.
In the 5 days prior, when the security advance team did their work, did they identify the rooftop as a potential threat?
Again, I'm pulling those reports and that information.
It's been 9
to
days,
conduct those
Madam
interviews.
Director. Did they notice a rooftop 150 yards away that was a potential threat? Yes or no?
I am certain that the rooftop was noticed. I am pulling the reports.
What was the security parameters around securing that rooftop? What did they do?
There was overwatch provided for that rooftop.
Did Overwatch fail?
I am waiting to hear what the results of the investigation were so that I can identify where the failure was.
Who did you talk to that was on the ground that day that was responsible for Overwatch? What are their names?
I'm not going to provide their names in this setting.
Did you talk to the people that were providing Overwatch that day?
I've talked to the people that conducted the advance on that day and that were working the shift and were the counter snipers on that day.
So you talked to the counter sniper team, you talked to the people who were providing Overwatch that day, and you talked to the advance team, correct?
Yes, sir.
What did they tell you?
We are putting together a comprehensive report so that I can identify exactly where the gaps and the failures.
When the counter sniper team was on the roof and they identified that there was suspicious activity on the roof in question, what was the chain of command's orders around the person on said roof? Because I'm quite sure somebody saw under your organization, the Secret Service, I'm quite sure somebody saw the shooter on the roof. So what was the communication through the chain of command to deal with said person?
What I can tell you is that when the individual was identified by the counter sniper, they took one shot and neutralized that individual.
But that was after the shooter already took a shot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what you're saying now is that the Secret Service did not see the shooter on the roof until after the shooter took a shot?
I do not have all of those details at this time.
If you don't have those details after 9 days, Director, then what you're telling me is that you guys didn't see it. Is that correct?
I am telling you I don't have all the details of the sequence at this time.
Director, it's been 9 days. Either you have the information or you do not. Is that correct?
We are still in the process of conducting interviews and an investigation.
Some of my colleagues have texted me over the last couple days, bipartisan, about whether you should lose your job. And I've been quiet on that question because I wanted to see what you were going to do today. In my opinion, you do need to be fired immediately. And it is because this is gross incompetence. And the fact that it's been 9 days, and these are simple questions to answer. I'm quite sure if I asked any one of my kids if they got in trouble and I told them to give me the details, I would get more answers from them than I'm getting from you right now. And that's what's frustrating on a bipartisan basis, on a nonpartisan basis. This is a joke. And Director, you're in charge, and that's why you need to go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Margie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cheatle, I'd like to remind you that you're under oath. The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, a protective intelligence team, a counter sniper element, and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our
In this
questions.
forum, I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
That is correct.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to provide names of our personnel. To
Why
this
not?
committee today?
The American people are demanding these answers from you today, Ms. Cheatle.
I will do the best to provide you accurate information based on the facts that I have at this time.
You're not answering our questions. The advance element coordinates with other intel or law enforcement partners, identifies threats and weaknesses at the sites and movements. We'd like a copy of the advance report. Have you brought it here with you today?
We will comply with the request for the documentation that has been requested.
When will that be, Ms. Cheatle? Because you should have brought it today.
I am certain that our personnel are working on obtaining all of that documentation.
I don't believe you, and neither do the people watching this hearing. You're not doing well, as Mr. Moskowitz informed you. You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions. Was there a protective intelligence team, and what technical resources were utilized for that event, specifically drone or helicopter assets?
There were a number of technical assets that were deployed for that event, and there was a protective intelligence team that was assigned to that event.
Why was Crooks able to fly a drone over the entire area the day of the rally and the day of his assassination attempt?
To my knowledge, he did not fly the drone over the entire area.
How did he fly a drone over the area, period? Any part of the area?
Again, I would have to go back and check the timeline of when that took place and when the event.
Why didn't you bring the timeline with you today to answer our questions?
I don't have all of the answers on the timelines based on the criminal investigation.
Were you not prepared today to answer our questions?
I am prepared to answer the questions based on the information and wanted to be able to provide.
Do you have a timeline do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job. Let's talk about things that are prohibited in Trump rallies. And I've been to a lot of Trump rallies. Backpacks and bags, bicycles, firearms, any type of weapon, or any other item determined to be a potential safety hazard, like a rangefinder would be one. At 5:10, Crooks is first observed by one of the snipers, AGR Sniper 1, at the building. 5:10, President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. 5:28, AGR Sniper 1 takes a picture of a bicycle and 2 bags. Those belong to Crooks. 5:32, AGR Sniper 1 spots Crooks looking at his phone and using a rangefinder. 5:55, Butler ESU Command confirms receipt of photos and states they have been relayed on. 6:05 p.m., AGR Sniper 1 later communicates that Crooks is seen moving northeast in direction of Sheets and that Crooks has a backpack. 2 minutes before the shooting, while President Trump has been allowed to take the stage, people see Crooks laying on his stomach in a sniper position on the roof, and they're yelling he has a gun, and they are trying to alert law enforcement and Secret Service. Why was Crooks not shot by the snipers? Why was he allowed to be there?
As soon as the individual was identified as a threat, they were...
No. What do you consider to be a threat? A man with a gun laying in a sniper position, a man that had a backpack, a man that had a bicycle, a man that had a rangefinder. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheatle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheatle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew, that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheatle? No. Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer that question. Director.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
We're waiting for your letter. We are waiting for your letter of resignation, and you really need to consider doing that before you leave today.
Chair recognizes Ms. McClain from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I want to thank the Secret Service agents, those who work tirelessly to protect our president, and specifically those agents who did not hesitate to jump in front of President Trump. And my heart goes out to the family of the Comptoir family and the people at the rally who are still recovering. On the other hand, the Secret Service has a leadership problem, and it falls on you. And although I appreciate your hollow words that the buck stops here, I was actually hoping for some answers. Director Cheatle, you must answer to the American people if you want to stay in charge. It's really, really simple. You want to keep your job, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. The best way to keep your job is to answer the questions, not play this shell game, not sing the Slim Shady song, wasn't me. I mean, come on. How long did you prepare for this hearing?
I've been preparing for this hearing over the weekend and into last week.
Okay, 5 days, 6 days?
As soon as I was notified.
And how long was that?
About this hearing.
Okay, 4 days?
I began preparing.
4 days, 3 days?
I'm not sure the date that I got the letter asking me to be here.
What are you sure of? Are you sure the color of your hair? Are you sure the color of your suit? I'm just, like, tell the American people, what are you sure of? You don't even know when you started preparing for the hearing? I mean, the biggest hearing of your life, and you have no clue? You can't remember when you started preparing for this hearing? Can you understand why those words seem hollow to the American people who are supposed to entrust their faith in you?
I assure you, the moment I received notification.
But you can't remember. You got a little Alzheimer's, dementia going? I mean, what, you can't remember.
I have several active investigations going on and an operational agency to run.
Okay. All right. But you want to take accountability, right? The buck stops with you, right?
I am taking accountability.
Super. Then let's start with trying to answer some questions. You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosives in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
investigation. Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain. All right, here we go. I'm not certain. I don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the evidence.
Did they share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for their
how
investigation.
Many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's do that. Let's for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers, and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent.
What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related to the
I'm asking you an
that
answer to the question. If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything up.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
I would leave it to the criminal investigation to answer questions related to that.
When you talk to the FBI and you ask them how many explosives, well, let me ask you, did you ask them how many explosives were on the roof? Did they answer that question? Or in the car, excuse me. Did they answer that question for you?
Yes.
Yes. So you know the answer to that question that my colleagues have asked you. But again, you refuse to give us the answers. You're playing this wasn't me. Well, I submit to you, if you can't, and it's not a can't, it's a won't. It's not a can't. It's not a I don't know. It's a I choose not to answer the question. Well, let me tell you, Ms. Cheatle, if you're going to lead, you need to lead. If you want to be in charge, then answer the question or step aside and have someone with the courage and the guts to answer to the American people the questions that they deserve answers to. And with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to continue down that vein. You have been here sitting today, Director Cheatle, definitively able to dismiss erroneous information and speculation. However, you are refusing to answer questions that we now know that you have the information for. You are saying that you are wanting to answer questions that the Secret Service has information to. Well, ma'am, you are the Secret Service. You are the director. You have said that you are the best for the job. So I'm going to ask you some questions now knowing that you do have answers from the FBI, whom you have been passing the buck to this entire day. And I'll start with something that, maybe the FBI doesn't know because it has to do with you personally. You said you spoke with President Trump after the assassination attempt. And I want to know, did you apologize to him directly for nearly having President Trump killed?
Yes, I did.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you recognize that this was your failure. Now, since the assassination attempt, you are under oath, reminding you. have you communicated with anyone at the White House on an encrypted messaging app like Signal? Yes or no?
No, I have not.
Are you willing to surrender your personal phone for analysis?
If I am required to do so.
Okay. I will look into making that request because I would like to see your personal phone to see if you're communicating over encrypted messaging apps. Have you ever turned down enhanced security requests from Donald Trump's detail, his special agent in charge, Sean Curran? Have you ever turned that down?
No, I have not.
Have there been, has your team, has the Secret Service? Maybe not you personally.
I believe, as I mentioned earlier, there are times when requests are made for
And you
assets,
have denied them. They have been denied.
And a denial doesn't
Has the Trump
necessarily
campaign
mean,
made requests for additional assets that have been denied?
Denial doesn't mean vulnerability.
Have there been additional requests for enhanced security at Mar-a-Lago?
We have made a number of enhancements to.
You confirmed that there were bomb-sniffing dogs that were provided. You failed to confirm if there were aerial security surveillance assets that were provided. So yes or no, was that provided?
At the rally?
At the rally, yes, ma'am.
We had Overwatch provided at the rally.
You've confirmed that the assassin was identified as suspicious 57 minutes prior to the shooting. Was the suspicious individual ever approached by an agent? Was any contact ever made with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that the standard protocol for someone who is identified as suspicious?
The protocol would be to locate the individual and.
And you said that he was located 2 to 5 times approximately?
No, I said that the information was passed potentially somewhere between 2 to 5
And he was
times.
never located by an agent?
To my knowledge, that individual was not located by an agent.
We have dozens of rally goers who have identified him and not one agent on the ground. There are many, many, many agents on the ground, local law enforcement, Secret Service. No one was able to identify him and have sights on and see him.
What I'm saying is that the agents that were on the ground at the time, I have no knowledge that they were able to interview him or locate him.
Thank you. Was there a local law enforcement officer who approached the roof and saw the shooter and saw that he was present on the roof?
That is the information that has been shared with me.
Have you spoke to that local law enforcement officer?
No, I have not.
Are you going to?
It is part of a criminal investigation that the FBI is interviewing those individuals.
Were agents stationed on the water tower?
No.
Why?
That would not be something that would be included in a security plan.
Has the man who is reported to have been present wearing a gray suit who allegedly requested a photo of the dead body of the assassin on top of the AGR roof been identified?
I don't have that information.
Is that something that you've heard of?
No.
Were ATF agents present at the rally?
To attend or to work?
To work.
Not to my knowledge.
How long did the counter sniper have crooks in his sights before the shooter opened fire on President Trump?
I don't have that specific timeline.
Will you be able to tell us if he communicated with other agents on what he was seeing through his sights?
Once I have that information, absolutely.
Because we need to know why he waited for multiple rounds to be fired at President Trump before the threat was neutralized. We need to know if he was given an order to hold fire. Now, it's you've excused the roof of being unmanned because of the slope of the roof. Do you continue to assert the slope of the roof as a credible reason for leaving this position undefended?
First, I'll go back and correct that there was no order to hold fire. Our agents and officers have the ability to neutralize a threat at the time that they see it.
I'm sorry, you don't know the communication that was taking place or how long he had him in his sights because you haven't spoke to him, but you do know that there was no order to hold fire.
I can tell you the way that our personnel are trained. They are trained on the use of force scale that when they see a threat, they are authorized to neutralize that threat. There is no They don't have to ask for permission.
You excuse the roof being unmanned because of the slope. Do you stand by that assertion?
The roof was not covered with an individual on it because there was overwatch provided.
Apparently not. No, there was no overwatch provided. This is very evident. President Trump was shot. A man died. There was no oversight provided. I find this rather maddening, especially now knowing that you do have answers from the FBI, who you have been passing the buck to this entire hearing, not answering a congressional hearing, members of Congress, while you are under oath and under a subpoena. I find it maddening that the director, that our country has come centimeters away from oblivion under your watch. You have answers. You are refusing to give those to us, directing us to the FBI, and this entire thing is a waste of time. You are responsible for the loss of a life and the shooting that took place on President Trump. You do need to resign. This is bipartisan. You need to be fired. You do not need to hold this position. You are not the best for this job. I am over my time, but I cannot tolerate your watch any longer, and I'm going to continue to call daily for you to be removed from your position, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Mr. Fry from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheatle, how long have you been with the Secret Service? 29 years, right?
That's correct.
And how long have you been director of the Secret Service?
Just under 2 years.
During your tenure as director under the Secret Service, I know we're here today to talk about the assassination attempt on President Trump, but how many other security lapses have occurred with protectees under your watch?
I don't have a specific number, but there have been some lapses.
There have been other lapses. Was one of them Jake Sullivan?
Yes, sir.
What happened there?
There was an individual who was able to access Mr. Sullivan's residence.
His residence? A protectee, somebody was able to break into his house. And what happened? Did anyone get fired because of that?
There were individuals who have been reassigned.
Reassigned. What other steps have taken? What I'm seeing. What other incidents have occurred other than Jake Sullivan? Was there an issue with the Secret Service agent and Vice President Harris?
I would not call that a security incident.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, you have security lapses with President Trump. You have security lapses with Jake Sullivan. You have issues with your personnel related to Vice President Kamala Harris. There seems to be a repeated theme here. Would you not agree with that?
I think that we are talking about separate categories of incidents.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think there's a repeated theme when you've got protectees and you're not upholding your core mission. Let me ask you something else. Does the Secret Service routinely record communications between and amongst detail?
Radio communications?
Any communication.
Email communications are captured, as well as text messages, and then depending on the detail, radio communications are recorded.
Does the Secret Service have recorded communications from the July 13th event?
We do not have radio communications from that day.
But you have text messages?
We do have emails and text messages.
Emails, okay, great. Does the head of the Trump detail or someone else embedded in this detail have command decision-making authority, or do they need to seek authorization from someone outside that detail?
The head of the detail has the decision-making authority for things that are necessary for that detail.
Is that standard for protection details?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Let me ask you something. During campaign events, is it common for the Secret Service to utilize other agencies?
Yes, it is.
What other agencies would be providing assistance to the Secret Service?
There are a number of other agencies that provide assistance to the Secret Service during campaigns. We utilize personnel from the Department of Homeland Security. We utilize personnel from the Department of Defense, and we utilize local law enforcement partners.
Are you on the same radios? Do you provide the radios to all the assets that are taking part in protection of an event?
We provide radios to the personnel from the Department of Homeland Security that are assisting us.
But not local law enforcement?
Local law enforcement is working on their own radios.
Are you on the same frequency?
We ensure that we have counterparts in the security room, and so the local law enforcement will place one of their personnel in the security room with our personnel so that we have interoperability communications.
Let me ask you something just about the timeline, because I think this is really interesting that we can't nail that down. I mean, I think there are lay people out there with more knowledge about the timeline than you seem to come before a subpoena in front of Congress. Was Mr. Crooks observed at the AGR building prior to the shooting?
He was observed on the grounds outside of our perimeter prior to the shooting.
At approximately what time was that? You don't have to give me the specific minute, but at approximately what time was that?
I believe it was about 45 minutes or so prior to.
Did the sniper team take a photo of Mr. Crooks?
The local team did, yes.
So it was a local team and not a Secret Service sniper?
That took the photo.
Okay. And did he relay that photo to Central Command?
Again, it's an active ongoing investigation, so I want to make sure that I'm factual with the route that photo took and who that was disseminated to and when.
What time did when did Mr. Crooks' status go from a suspicion, a person that was under suspicion, to a threat? When did that happen? And maybe not even a specific time, Director Cheatle, maybe a certain event that happened that transformed him from a person of suspicion to a threat. When did that happen?
To the best of my knowledge, based on what I have been told thus far, it's approximately 5 minutes to where individuals relayed that there was an incident being worked at the 3 o'clock of the president.
So that was, but it was before the shots were fired? That
is correct, but again, it was not phrased as a threat. It was just that something was being worked.
Yeah, but my question is, when did he become, when did he transform from suspicion to threat? Because they're treated very differently. People can be suspicious, but they're not a threat until a certain point in time. So when did that happen?
I believe that it was seconds before the gunfire started.
Seconds. My gosh, we actually have a few questions that we got answered today. Listen, I'm going to wrap up here, Mr. Chairman, but here's the frustration that people have. The buck stops with you. You've said that yourself. But the problem in Washington, D.C., it is the only town in America that you can be so bad at your job that you actually get a promotion or don't get fired. You have not been able to answer the number of agents, whether or not requests were denied on additional security, whether or not law enforcement were able to engage before the shooting with the assassin, how he got on the roof, how the rifle got on the roof. You can't tell us how many shots he fired, whether the casings were recovered. You can't tell us anything about his cell phone. You can't tell us whether the rally was supposed to be postponed, given the intelligence that you were receiving. You can't tell us whether the car had a bomb. You can't even tell us his motive. And the American people are incredibly distrustful because it has taken 9 days to even get a scintilla of evidence out of you. Maybe if I was CNN or ABC or NBC, I would have gotten much more thorough and accurate information, but we have not received that in a subpoenaed hearing in front of this Congress. That is why the American people are frustrated, and I echo the bipartisan calls on this committee and all across this country that you should resign, or maybe when the president wakes up from his nap, he can fire you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Director Cheatle, can you please give me the names of the individuals who are in charge of your con-op for the rally?
I'm not going to release names.
Can you give me the titles? And how many individuals?
No.
Nothing?
We had a full advance team that was responsible for advancing
How many
the site.
people are the final approval authority?
There are a number of people
Can you
that
give me a
are
number?
engaged in approving
Can you
the
give
plan.
me a number?
No, I do not have a firm number.
Can you just confirm whether or not, I understand this is an open investigation, but in order to dispel conspiracy theories, have you guys been able to subpoena the shooter's Discord records, or has the FBI, to your knowledge?
I believe that the FBI is working on those.
Okay. Is it factual to say that you have not ruled out that the shooter was working with other people or persons?
Again, the FBI is conducting the criminal investigation into the shooter.
Can you, at least in an effort to dispel conspiracy theories, can you confirm or deny that?
At this time, we do not have that there were any other people engaged.
So you believe he was acting alone?
I do.
Okay. Have you been made aware of multiple eyewitness reporting that there was a second shooter on a water tower?
I do not have any information related to any second shooter.
Okay, the reason I asked that is because according to testimony from multiple witnesses, they did report that. And again, to my understanding, there were over 40 sniper teams that were briefed by the Butler ESU. And I want to make sure that people are aware, if you're saying that there's not another shooter, that we are able to clear that information, because from this whole entire briefing, it doesn't seem like much information has been able to get out to the American people. So I'm trying to dispel rumors, as I'm sure you understand. Was it true that Secret Service was present at the Butler ESU briefing?
There was a briefing between the counter sniper teams that were working on the ground.
Was Secret Service present?
Yes, to my knowledge.
Okay, I want to read you a report from people that seem to be throwing you under the bus and stated that they were in attendance and that Secret Service was not in attendance at the security briefing, according to individuals with knowledge, to also include that the AGR building where the shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks was located was actually not a part of their security perimeter for that. So there was not Secret Service present. It seems as though that when you were asked earlier from Rep. Krishnamurthy about whether or not Secret Service was aware of a threat, you had said no, they were unaware of a threat. And yet, according to communications, again, from law enforcement that were in some of these group chats, they actually had reported that Secret Service was made aware of a threat at around 5:59 p.m. as a part of the command, including Secret Service, aware of messages and requests about information about the suspect's location. Can you please tell me if you have knowledge of that at all?
Again, I think we're conflating the difference between the term threat and suspicious.
But you guys did have knowledge at 5:59 p.m. according to those group chats, did you not?
Of a suspicious individual.
Okay. Chairman, in my opinion, according to some of the testimony today, I feel that you have perjured yourself in some instances, and so I'm going to ask for a full review of the transcripts by staff, and if you find that to be the case, I do ask that you bring perjury charges against the director. I will say this, it is very frustrating, and I've talked to my colleagues and we've said it to your face, that you have been up here basically stonewalling our ability to get the answers to the American people. And what I will also say is that every single member of Congress does not feel safe with you in charge. You have heard that, and I think that we are all sitting ducks with you in directing the Secret Service currently. But more importantly, it sends a message to our adversaries that we are not protected, and we are one of the strongest countries in the world, so you have essentially made us a less safe country because of it. As a result of that, I'm asking you to formally step down. I share my same opinions as my Democrat colleagues. And I also think that your efforts to bring forward a full investigation and report in 60 days is unacceptable. And as a result of that, I'm going to do everything in my legislative toolkit to ensure that that happens sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that you know that we brought a vote on inherent contempt against Garland for essentially blocking a congressional investigation, and I don't think that you should be any different. So I will say that I am just completely disgusted by your performance today, and I understand that you're probably in a position where you're being told not to testify, which is why we had to subpoena you. I think that goes back to Garland. But again, that is part of the flushing that we need to get out of Washington, and I would be happy to assist in that process. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Langworthy from New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you bringing this hearing forward with subpoena. Director, yesterday I made the decision to get in my car and drive to Butler, Pennsylvania in preparation for this moment and asking you questions about the events of the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. I've done several presidential events prior in my career, and I wanted to see this site with my own two eyes because I don't believe the video footage tells the whole story or looking at things on a diagram. And I was absolutely appalled when I went to the site, when I saw the fact that I could have stood on the roof of that building, the AGR building, and hit that podium with a 9-iron, and I'm a lousy golfer. And the fact that that was not included in the perimeter is a complete dereliction of the duty of the U.S. Secret Service. I mean, there are very few rooftops that needed to be secured, and the fact that the Secret Service, as they were putting a site plan in place, did not think it was necessary to man those rooftops, you have completely walked away from your duties. You had one job, and that's to protect the future President of the United States or to protect all of the other protectees. And President Trump is only here today by God's grace because he had just something in him that made him turn his head just slightly, or we would be in a national period of mourning right now. And you have done nothing here today. I've rewritten these questions like 4 times during your hearing, and you haven't answered a damn one of them. You haven't given any information. You have hidden behind this FBI investigation, and I think you should be ashamed of yourself because you have brought more shame to your agency than I think that the assassination attempt has at this point. This is literally the worst performance I have ever seen in front of a congressional hearing. You have offered no reason for this committee, this body, or the American people to trust you or the Secret Service today. And you should resign. You have said that you've put new security measures in place after the assassination attempt. Can you tell us what those are? Because the American people want to know that you're taking real corrective measures. But today you've pointed to an investigation. Investigation or not, you still have a job to do with a zero-fail mission. But so far, there's been absolutely no accountability, and you've admitted that here today. Not one person's been suspended. Not one person's been put on a desk. Meanwhile, we've got the most contentious of elections in our nation's history, and protectees are in danger because of incompetent leadership. Not the agents. The agents piled on President Trump to protect his life. Those are heroes. But the administrators running your agency, they're not right now. They're not doing their jobs. And you certainly aren't doing. The most appalling part of Saturday's events is the countless opportunities that Secret Service had to stop Crooks before he even got on the roof. At 3 o'clock, Crooks raised suspicion by entering the rally with a rangefinder. At 5:45, a cop with a Beaver County Emergency Services unit saw Crooks eyeballing the roof at the AGR International Building. And then at 5:55, Secret Service was warned of a suspicious person and identifies Crooks as a threat. This was all before shots were fired 15 minutes later. Director, yes or no, did local law enforcement alert the Secret Service about Crooks' presence at the rally?
Yes, they did.
The shooter came to attention of law enforcement almost an hour before President Trump went on stage. Law enforcement alerted the Secret Service of the shooter. Over and over, you've said there's a difference between a suspicious individual and a threatening individual. Can you explain what the shooter needed to exemplify to be called a threat?
So I'm not clear as to what identified him as suspicious to the individuals who originally clarified him that way. For the Secret Service, for an individual to be determined to be a threat, that individual would have to be seen with a weapon or capable of doing some sort of harm to our protectees.
I mean, Director, an individual walking into a rally with a rangefinder, scoping out an unprotected rooftop, and he reportedly flew a drone over hours before. It sounds like a lot more than suspicious, especially at a presidential rally. Your operational lapses, your resource management, and poor judgment nearly resulted in the assassination of President Trump. I mean, the dereliction of duty here is just appalling. The fact that you haven't visited Butler is just maddening to me. That you're not taking this job seriously. Many people here have called for your resignation. I've introduced a resolution here into this body that hopefully will get a vote this week calling on the president to fire you, ma'am. You have not done your job. You have put 2 black eyes on your agency, and you need to go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Burlison from Missouri.
Director Cheatle, I just want to kind of get an idea of what you can answer, because outside of what the FBI is responsible for, you have full responsibility for the Department of Secret Service. So the question is, what is the mission? Who defines the mission?
Our mission of the Secret Service is to protect the president, the vice president, their immediate families, presidential candidates, the former presidents, and those by executive order. And we also have an investigative mission.
And those are well defined?
Yes, they
Everyone within the agency understands the mission?
Yes, they do.
What about protocols and standards? Who defines the protocols and standards?
We have a number of protocols and policies in place for the various missions that we have.
So would it be safe to say that you failed the mission, the ultimate mission?
I have stated repeatedly here today that there was a failure.
What about specific failures within protocols and guidelines within the agency?
Again, I am certain that the investigation that is being conducted internally as well as the external investigation.
You said earlier in the hearing that there was either a communication, there was errors in communication or in operations. Could it be both? In both errors in operational decisions and errors in communications?
I think the investigation potentially could identify both.
So I want to talk about communications. Representative Boebert asked earlier about using encrypted apps, that you said you've not used, I guess, Signal. Have you used any encrypted app to communicate from your personal device?
I do, on occasion, use encrypted apps to communicate.
So you use some form of an encrypted app to communicate with people within the federal government? With local law enforcement? Whom are you communicating using the encrypted apps?
Many times it's with colleagues and associates.
So you're communicating with colleagues on a personal device?
There are times that the Secret Service, when we work internationally with some of our partners, that they don't have the same texting capability.
And you're not able to do that with your government-issued device?
Recently, we have been able to install some of those apps on government devices.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that we can get access to. I'm actually shocked that you are using your personal device and encrypted communication tools. I think that might be the most shocking thing that I've heard today. I didn't expect for you to say that. We have requested, this committee has requested multiple documents. And this is not, under the purview of the FBI, this is under your purview. We requested a complete list of all law enforcement personnel, including Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, local law enforcement with the roles in protecting the president. And we requested that to be, for us to receive that by July 18th. Did you provide that?
I believe that our agency is in the process of collecting all documents.
So you did not, you have not provided it. How long does it take to determine who the personnel were that were on site?
We are collecting a comprehensive list of all the documents that have been requested.
We also requested all the audio and video recordings that your agency, not the FBI, but your agency has in possession related to the event. Did we receive those? Have you provided those at all?
We are in the process of collecting all documentation requested.
You're in the process, but you have not. Any memorandums or any internal communications related to the event? We requested that you provide that. Have you provided any of that?
We are in the process of collecting the information that has been requested.
Okay. So when can we expect to receive these documents? How long does it take to determine who was on site, who was being employed to be there to protect the former president? When can we expect that? How many days does it take to provide that information?
We want to make sure that we have a comprehensive accounting of all of the documents that were engaged in that day, and we will make them available as soon as possible. I think transparency is the key here. It's shocking to me that we are communicating in a encrypted app to colleagues. I'm almost certain that violates some federal laws. I would like to clarify, you didn't ask me whether my communications were government work related or whether they were personally related.
You're communicating with colleagues.
I don't communicate government business with colleagues on a personal device. I communicate on my work device.
Are you using an encrypted device on your work device?
I am not.
No encrypted apps?
No, I do not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Waltz from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Director, please, I'd like to direct your attention to this video.
And I sincerely appreciate the clarity on this.
Can we turn up the volume, staff?
I just want to ask you, because this has popped up. Republican Congressman Mike Waltz, he said on social media on Saturday, and I'm going to read this for you because it does talk about you, Secretary. I have very reliable sources telling me that there have been repeated requests for stronger Secret Service protection for President Trump denied by Secretary Mayorkas. Your department has already pushed back on that, calling that absolutely false, but he is putting this on you. Can you respond to that, please?
Well, that is, yeah, that's a baseless and irresponsible statement, and is one that is unequivocally false.
Director Cheatle, did you speak with your boss, Secretary Mayorkas? You fall under DHS. Did you speak with him on the 14th, the day after?
Yes, I did.
So you spoke with him before he made that statement?
I spoke with him immediately following the incident.
Did you inform him that all requests for additional resources for President Trump had been fulfilled? Or that it was false to say they had been denied?
I informed him that the request for that rally that day had been fulfilled.
Okay, you continue to answer that very carefully, because I made a broader statement. The agents that came to me made a broader statement that his permanent protective detail for years now have been asking for more. Is that correct?
I do not have specific incidents of those requests.
Is it correct that they've been asking for more?
I have heard the same reports that you have. Without having them in front of me, I am unable.
Those requests are made in writing. I mean, the agents are telling me they make them in writing. This isn't a verbal agency. Things are made in writing.
I understand what you're saying. I don't have those requests in front of me here.
I'm not asking if you have them in front of you. Are you aware that they were made?
As I said earlier, there are times when requests are made, and depending on the availability of assets, or if there is a way that
So there were times when they were denied?
If there is a way that vulnerability can be mitigated in a different way, then that is why the
So there are times when they were denied, for a variety of reasons.
That is why the Secret Service has a multi-layered and multifaceted security plan, so that we can pivot if we need to.
So in the wake, in the immediate 48 hours of an assassination attempt on a former president, could be the next leader of the free world, almost had his head blown off, your boss says that's irresponsible and false to say things are denied. And you had talked to him. So did he just make that on his own, make that up on his own, or did you tell him that?
We were speaking about the requests made at the rally.
Staff, can we show the next slide, please? Then we have your spokesman. Did you sign off on this statement? That there's an assertion that a member of the former president's team requested additional security resources and those were rebuffed. This is absolutely false. In fact, we added protective resources and technology and capability as part of the increased campaign travel tempo. But next slide, please. Next slide, please, staff. We have the Washington Post article that then says we now have senior Secret Service officials saying there were at times when it was denied. So which is it?
Again, there have been a number of conversations going on here.
Did you sign off on that spokesman's statement?
The spokesman's statement, I believe, was related to requests that were made.
Did you sign off on it?
For the requests that were made at the rally.
Did you sign off on the statement before it went out? I sign off on my press spokesman's statement before they go out. I would hope you would in the wake of an assassination attempt.
Yes.
You did? Mm-hmm. Categorically false that any requests were made. You signed off on it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity. Madam Director, how many press conferences have you held since the assassination attempt?
We have put out press releases.
How many press conferences have you held? Gone to the mic, taken questions from the public, from the media? How many?
I have not held any.
How many has Secretary Mayorkas held?
I don't
0. How many has the FBI held? 0. How many has the Department of Justice held? I know you know the answer.
I believe there was a press conference in Butler after the incident occurred.
By local law enforcement, not by you and not by the Department of Homeland Security. So this is how misinformation flies. In the darkness, in the absence of information. Now we have 9 days later before a congressional committee, we all represent almost 1 million people, and you still don't have answers. Are you aware that national news anchors are saying this was a hoax? On national television, they're saying, no, the president wasn't shot, it was flying glass. Are you aware of that?
I have not heard those reports.
Are you aware that, there are rumors rampant online that there were multiple shooters?
Yes.
Are you aware that because the shooter had overseas encrypted platforms in Belgium and New Zealand and in Germany, that a lot of people are speculating there could have been foreign involvement, logically? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And have you done anything to disabuse any of these notions today? No. You haven't. Madam Director, I would fire you. Regardless of the failure, I would fire you just how you've handled it since. You should have been the first to the mics to say, America, world, I want to assure you we're going to get to the bottom of this. I want to assure you full transparency. Our agency clearly had major gaps here, and I want to personally take responsibility and accountability. You should have been the first, standing alongside Secretary Mayorkas, and I would even go so far as to say have daily press conferences, updating everyone on what we know. But you haven't had any of that. What are you hiding behind?
I am not hiding.
Because you're making the situation worse. I think you've heard that on a bipartisan basis here. You are making this situation far worse in the absence of information. Let's move on. This is truly astounding. I want to be clear, because you keep dodging the issue. Has President Trump's permanent protective detail requested additional assets over the last few years? He is clearly not your average former president. He's not Jimmy Carter in an old folks' home. He's not President Bush painting out in his barn. He has multiple residences, a lot of rallies. He's very publicly engaged, and he has a foreign threat in addition to domestic threats. Have they requested additional resources?
That's the last question, but please feel free to answer.
Thank you,
Director.
Thank you. We have continued, as I stated earlier, to increase over the past year the assets that are at the former president's residence and supplied to his detail.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask for one more indulgence. It is clear you have not been to Butler, Pennsylvania. Leaders lead and should be on the ground. You have not been there. Instead, you went to the RNC, but you weren't originally even going to go there. Where were you originally scheduled to go besides the RNC, a national special security event?
I was always scheduled to go to the RNC.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter into the record that the director was scheduled to go to Aspen, hobnobbing around with, I don't know what liberal elites go to Aspen. That was where you were originally scheduled to go to speak at a forum.
I was scheduled to go to the RNC. I was going to leave the RNC for 24 hours and return back to the RNC.
I hope, as your predecessor, Julie Pearson, with a security incident on the White House and under the Obama administration and Reagan's Secret Service detail lead, I would hope you would have the dignity for the sake of the agents in the service to resign.
I'll deliver my closing remarks. Director Cheatle, I subpoenaed you to appear today to get answers for the American people about the failures that led to the assassination attempt of President Donald J. Trump. Unfortunately, you refused to answer today. And this committee is not known for its model of bipartisanship, but I think today we came together unanimously in our disappointment for your lack of answers. You've stated that the FBI will investigate and give a report, and you estimate 60 days. We've been waiting for months and months for lots of different bits of information from the FBI. We have no confidence in the FBI. The majority of this committee has no confidence in the FBI. I sincerely hoped that the hearing today would give not just Congress confidence in the Secret Service, but the American people would have confidence in the Secret Service. We don't have confidence, not just in Congress, but I don't believe the American people tonight when they go to bed are going to have confidence that the Secret Service is the best it can be at protecting President Biden, at protecting the First Lady, at protecting President Trump, at protecting their families. That's what the primary role for the Secret Service should be. And some people have said and speculated, well, there needs to be more money and more employees. as I stated early on, $3.1 billion. I believe next year it's going to be $3.2 billion budget, over 8,000 employees. If the Secret Service is spread too thin and doing things like inspecting counterfeit, which is what the Secret Service was created to do, was to inspect counterfeit money and things like that with the Treasury. If it's spread too thin, then we need to come together in Congress, and I think we can do that in a bipartisan way to narrow the focus of the Secret Service to protect the leaders of our country, to protect our elections by protecting our candidates. And I don't believe we have any confidence that you can do that as the leader of the FBI. I sincerely hope that we would adjourn this committee hearing and have confidence not just in the Secret Service, but in you as director of the Secret Service. But we do not. Taking responsibility requires a lot of things. It means providing transparency. It means answering simple questions. It means providing a specific timeline of July 13th to this committee and the American people. I mean, it's been 9 days. There were people that were demanding that we have a hearing the next day or 2 days following the shooting. And I said, no, we need to give the Secret Service ample time to be able to answer those questions. 9 days. 9 days. And I don't think we answered very many questions that the American people have. I don't think there was I've never said this before, and I've presided over a lot of hearings. I don't think there was one question asked by anyone that the average American hasn't already asked at a diner or at church or at a ball game. The American people have questions. They deserve answers. Congress deserves answers. You were subpoenaed today to provide answers, and ma'am, you did not do that. So, as Ranking Member Raskin stated, he and I will be sending a letter requesting that you submit your resignation as a step toward accountability in what happened. And one of the biggest frustrations that many of us have, especially on this side of the aisle, is that there's never accountability in this administration. And when you look at the debacles prior to July 13th, I mean, it would be hard to beat the withdrawal in Afghanistan, the debacle there, and no one was held accountable. To this day, no one has been held accountable for that. But here we have clearly video showing people notifying the police, and the police are blaming the Secret Service. The Secret Service are blaming the police. Homeland Security is blaming everybody. But at the end of the day, after this hearing and after our request for information, we don't have any answers for the American people, and we don't have that confidence that you can lead the Secret Service to restore the confidence. And again, I commend the ranking member for joining with me in the letter asking your resignation, and we certainly hope that you will take that to heart. With that and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witness, which will be forwarded to the witness. If there's no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned.